Hi, everyone. Please let me know if you could hear me okay. If you could just let me know in the chat area, or if there's some little icons across the bottom, you could just hit yes or no. I guess you wouldn't be able to hit no. I'm going to get my recording on, and I'm actually going to share my screen and do some notes right in Word. And if any time during our discussion here, which is mostly going to be me talking, right? But if you have any kind of questions or need clarification on anything, just let me know in chat, or you can unmute your microphone and let me know. Just ask a question. And as I said, this is going to be recorded. So if you need to go back and listen to it again, it'll be available out on Canvas, and I'll let you all know when that will occur. So I'm going to share my screen now. I've got a lot of mess going on because I just finished. That's not what I want. Hold on a second. Let me find, share my screen. I want to find a Word document. There we go. I'm going to go in there. And I'm actually going to start a new Word document for our notes. So if you want to jot this stuff down as we go, because some people I know learn by writing stuff down, that's a great idea. If you're like, I'm just going to sit back and listen, the notes will be here and it'll be part of the presentation. So we're going to be starting where we left off in Chapter 2, and that's actually with any economic system must answer 5 questions. And depending on the type of economic system it is, will depend on how these items are answered. We are going to be talking about our market system. That's our focus of our semester. So I want to answer these questions in our lecture today based on how a market system, but keep in mind, even if it's a command economic system, they have to answer these questions as well. So here's our first one. What goods and services will be produced? Okay, so what kind of goods and services will the economy produce? Well, it depends. And here's the key. The ones that make a profit for a company. Now, if you're sitting there saying, yeah, but that doesn't mean they're going to be purchased. Oh, it does mean they're going to be purchased, because it's only through the purchase by the consumer that a profit can be had by a company. So it's really the consumer who is key to determining the quantities and types of products. And it's those products that will be produced. And they give an example in your book. I believe it was in your book, and this is so true. You'll hear McDonald's come out with a new product. They always have some type of new product that they'll try. I remember when they had the McFlurries, they had the McShamrock Shake during St. Patrick's Day. Some of these items, they had various burgers. You can't even remember their names. Why? Because they didn't survive. People didn't buy them. So guess what happened to the products? They stopped producing them. If people aren't buying the products, the company is not bringing in revenue on the products, because that's what they call revenue, the price they charge for a product. So why would they make something they can't sell? Okay, so businesses aren't just free to do whatever they want. If, let's say McDonald's said, oh, the heck with it, we're going to make McFlurries all the time, whether people buy them or not. Well, they have cost associated with making a product. If it doesn't sell, the company loses money wastes resources, and ultimately will fail. And remember, we're going to come back to this. Self-interest drives what consumers want. Self-interest drives what business wants. Business want profit, consumers want wants satisfied. So that's what that is how we answer our question. So in the end, key thing to remember here is companies focus that their total revenues, the amounts charged for the products, must always be greater than the total cost to produce that product. And that will automatically occur. The revenues will be there if the consumers want it. Okay, so that is how we answer that first question. Do you guys have any questions? I'm going to try to bring my little chat screen up here so I can see as you guys are with me. I'm kind of out in the dark here. Just bear with me one second. Okay, I see. Nope. Okay, thank you. Now, the next question that must be answered is, how will the goods be produced? We know what goods need to be produced, but how will they be produced? And the key to this is that they use a combination of techniques that will enable the lowest cost per product or output. So the company will produce them so that they have the least cost of production. So let's focus a little bit on that. Least cost of production. What is that? Well, remember, the business is the one who has to acquire the resources, the capital goods, the raw materials, the labor. Okay? So they want to find these items that will enable them to produce the product at the lowest dollar amount. So they're looking to find the optimum location when they're going to produce in consideration of where the resources are. Do we have a labor force where we want to put our factory? Could be one question. The productivity of those resources, are they skilled? There might be people there might be a workforce, but are they skilled? Are they efficient? What are the transportation costs associated with production? So these are some items they're looking at. What kind of available technologies are there for us to create our product? Because remember, the technology, the most current, is what helps you to be the most efficient. As I was talking about the other day in class, when I first went into accounting, everything was on paper. Nobody had a computer, or they were very limited. So it took us a lot longer to do various accounting products or services that we were giving to our customer. It took us a lot longer to complete than it does today with the technological advance of computers and clouds and the internet. We have more efficiency. So that gives us a lower cost of producing the same service. And then resource prices in general, your raw materials, items like that. These will all contribute to producing your product at the lowest price. Here's the key though. We have to focus on cost. So we could use fewer resources, but still have higher costs. So it's not about using the least amount of resources. It's about using the resources at the lowest cost. For example, we could make, I had an example in my head before, and one keeps bothering me about that. Give me a second, I might have jotted down my notes here. Okay, so we might be able to make a table, I'm sitting at a table, with a really high-end wood that you don't have to use a lot of. But the wood costs $100 a square foot to make the table, where we could acquire wood that has the same quality, use more of the wood, and the cost is $50 per square foot. So when we're talking about resources, we're not saying use the fewest amount of resources, but those that will allow us to have the lowest costs. I hope that makes sense. Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay, so we've dealt with what will be produced, how it will be produced. Let's go to our third one. And that is who will get the products, get the product or service, or what the book calls output. Who gets it? Well, that depends. That depends on the income. Sorry, let me scroll that up. Depends on the income of the individuals and what we call households. Households being one or more person in a housing unit. One or more persons in a housing unit when we talk about households. It could be an apartment, a condo, a house, a cabin, whatever your household unit is, an RV, okay, a trailer, it doesn't matter. That would be considered a household. And then, of course, they will purchase not only on their income, but on their tastes, their self-interest. So who will get that output is really dependent on the income of the individuals and households. Let me see if there's anything I want to add to that. Okay, so yeah, products go to those who are willing and able to buy them. It's satisfying their self-interest. Okay. And I think that's what we want to say there. Is there any questions? Go back, see if I can get my darn chat room back up. It's not coming back up for me. Don't know why. Okay, well, I'm going to keep going. I know this stuff isn't really heavy and you've read through it, but just to clarify these things. I don't know why it keeps telling me this. Oh, there's nobody waiting there. That class ended. Okay. How will the system, so how will the market system, in our case, accommodate change? And quite honestly, it automatically happens. It accommodates it very well, a market system. A market system is dynamic. It is constantly changing. Why? Tastes change constantly. Technology is constantly changing. Resource supplies, new resources, different types of resources. Now, what helps signal these changes are prices. Now let's talk about this. The change, like I said, it automatically occurs, and pricing will indicate when tastes are changing maybe, or technology is changing, or resource supplies even. And let's say people are once loved hamburgers. I always go to hamburgers, okay? But have decided they're sick of them and start instead eating pizza. Okay, so that shift in taste, what's it going to do? It's going to decrease the amount of hamburgers in demand. So the quantity of hamburgers, the demand for them, will decrease. That means hamburger prices, the businesses will start lowering the price of hamburgers just to get somebody to buy them. They're going to have a lot of more hamburgers. They need to get people to buy them. So let's lower the price. This could ultimately, if the hamburger company doesn't respond with a different type of product or an innovation of some kind, this could lead to the exit of companies from the hamburger market. Uh-oh, somebody just came in, huh? Okay, let's see. Oops. All right, welcome whoever came in. You could mute. Adam, if you can mute your mic unless you had a question. Thank you. So we are in the process of talking about the different questions an economic system has to answer, and we're on how will it accommodate change. So what's going to happen with the pizza market? Well, now people want pizza. So there's going to be an increase in demand for the quantity of pizza. That will drive the price of pizza up. Now, entrepreneurs are out there going, whoa, people want to buy pizza. There'll be new businesses that enter that market. Now, remember, that's not going to stay constant forever. It's dynamic. It's always changing. But that's how we are able to accommodate change. We watch the prices of items. The prices will increase or decrease based on the quantity demanded of consumers. And that's usually changes in tastes, technology, or even resource supplies can have a purpose, or one of the reasons for the change in that demand. Okay, any questions? Okay, so let's go then to our final question that needs to be answered, and that is, how will the system promote progress? Now, especially in the United States, consumers, I should say how, not ho. Okay, now, especially in the United States, but across the world, society wants two things: economic growth and a higher standard of living, being able to buy more with your income, having a higher income, having a better technology. The market system, due to the rewards to entrepreneurs, okay, oops. So the market system rewards entrepreneurs, those who take a risk, for new products and technologies that are created. How? Through profits. Okay, so an entrepreneur who introduces a new popular product will be rewarded. They're going to have increased revenues in their business and profits. On the technology side, new technologies will help reduce production costs, as we talked about before. Entrepreneurs, businesses are always looking to reduce their production costs, use the least production cost methods to produce their goods. So the business owners are given this incentive by being rewarded to automatically promote progress within a market system. Your book talks a little bit about companies that don't adhere to change. They're called creative destruction. And that occurs when a new product comes in and replaces an old product, and it basically destroys a company because they don't adapt to that new product. It happened with the typewriter industry and computers. It happened with cassette players and CDs. And actually CDs had the same thing impact them when the iPods and MP3 players and all the MP4s all came out. The newer technologies replaced them, and the old way, the old companies that used the old way didn't adapt quick enough. Same with cameras. Okay, well, 30 years ago, you didn't have a phone with a camera in it, even 15, 20 years ago. Okay, so if those companies like Kodak didn't adapt and provide a product that would be in competition with the phones, then they creatively destructed themselves. Okay, one other thing to remember is that technological advances in the economy require entrepreneurs to demand and expect better capital goods. So they will use their money to purchase better capital goods as a resource to make their own products. So some resources then will be used in, we'll need to create those capital goods as well. So we're just continuing to move forward technologically and creating new products and bettering our standard of living and creating economic growth. So in a market system, that is how we answer those 5 questions. Are there any questions? I don't know why my chat room thing won't go. Oh, there it is. Okay. Nope. Okay, great. All right. Hey, Adam. Okay. All right. So the next part we want to talk about is competition, which is a key component of a market system. And it really is the mechanism for control of the market system. And it's sometimes called the invisible hand. So hopefully, I'm going to see if I can share my video here. And I'm going to need to come back here, a new share. There we go. So you guys can listen to this YouTube video. It's a minute and a half long, describing what we mean by competition and the invisible hand. So let's take a listen. Okay, guys, so that's just a quick, let me get out of that one. A quick description of the invisible hand. And let me go back over to where I was. Okay, there we go. Talking about competition. And as you can see, they went on to talk about how, you know, people in certain classes may not see the invisible hand as the perfect item or mechanism, especially if they're in a low income area. But generally, suppliers or businesses, as we should look at them, will produce for their self-interest, which is to make a profit, and consumers will purchase for their self-interest, which is to satisfy a want. We talked about this in chapter 1. And the meeting of those two distinct entities, businesses and consumers, will drive this idea of competition. Okay, so, and it automatically happens. It doesn't need to have any other interference. And that's what they were talking about in the video as well, that some people have gone, you know, to the point of saying government shouldn't be involved in all, just let it all naturally occur because of the self-interest people are striving to attain. However, we do know government does get involved, and we have a whole chapter on talking about that in our own market system. But, so of the market system, here's the 3 items that really stand out. Efficiency in, efficiency in the allocation of resources. Definitely. We're trying least cost production. We're trying to use the lowest cost of resources and use them to the best of our ability with the best technology. Incentives. For people to be productive and acquire skills so that they can sell these skills as a resource to the business so they can acquire their own income. And then personal freedom of the individual and the business to make economic decisions. Okay? So, and that includes, by the way, entrepreneurs. And the assumption of risk. And they're the big ones. They take on a lot of risk. We're going to talk about those in a few minutes. After we take a look at page 38 of your book. Now, in the next part of your book, and we already talked a little bit about this, they talk about why the command system doesn't work. You could read through that again, listen to the videos, but we talked about this, that the coordination problem, it was very hard for central planners to decide what people wanted and how they, you know, and producing what the people wanted. They tried using computer systems, we saw in that one video back in the 70s, to determine the wants of the people and produce the proper products and services in the Soviet Union. The other thing is there's a lack of incentive, especially on the planner's part, because they get paid whether they predict or not. They're like weathermen, right? They can get their cash, their salary, by doing their job, which is making sure products are produced and resources are used to produce them. But if they're wrong, what happens? Well, if they don't produce enough of a product, there's going to be shortages. And that's ultimately what was happening in the Soviet Union and other command economies. So because of those reasons, that's why we don't see them as prevalent as maybe we did 30 years ago. Okay, so we have a few more minutes here. I want to take a look at page 38 of your book and talk about this graph, which is a very important graph. And it's really what we call the circular flow model for our market system. So we're going to start with the outer flow and talk about those. Let's first talk about the boxes though. We have the resource market, okay, which essentially households sell resources to business. So it could be through labor, okay, capital, entrepreneurial ability. But we sell those to the resource market, and then the businesses buy those resources, use those resources to make products. And that product market is just that, the place where the goods and services are produced by businesses are bought and sold. Now, when it comes to businesses, they talk about 3 different types of businesses. So I want to take a few minutes now and make sure we're all on the same page when it comes to this. The first is a sole proprietorship. And the sole proprietorship is a business owned by one individual. That's it. They can make products, they could sell services. They're just owned by one company. They assume all the risk and reward of ownership. They are also responsible for all amounts owed by the company, by the sole proprietorship. So it's a very risky type of business to get involved in. Another type of business is a partnership. Partnership, the only difference between a partnership and a sole proprietorship is now you have 2 or more owners. Now they jointly, depending on the number of owners, assume the risk and rewards of ownership. Again, they are also responsible for all amounts, owed by the company. So if the company cannot pay its debts, what it owes, the owners must take their own personal money and pay for those items. Corporations are very different, and that's your next major type of entity. There's other types out there, but those are your 3 basic ones. A corporation is a separate legal person or entity. Because of that, a company must receive permission from a state, not the federal government, a state government, state law. Each state has its own corporate law, so a state will give permission to be recognized as a corporation. The owners of a corporation do not have the same type of risk as a sole proprietor or a partner does in a partnership. They are not responsible for the debts of the corporation. So what does this mean? The most they can lose is what they gave. Now, this means if a corporation cannot pay its debts, the corporation, the business, will be sued, file bankruptcy. Okay, so it's not the individual owner that has that risk anymore. So that's very important to know when forming a business, and not only that, when we're looking at these businesses. So many companies in our country are corporations. There are various statistics in your book regarding the amount of sales from corporations. There are about 30 million businesses in the United States, ranging from companies like Walmart to single-person sole proprietors. So there is a vast array of these that are all in the product and service market. Their ownership is different, and the owners take on different levels of risk. And that's what we want to get across there. So let's go back now and take a look at our graph. So let's start with our households. Okay. Households take their income that they receive from resource markets. Now think about this. A person gives their entrepreneurial ability. That's a resource. A person works. That's their labor. So they sell these items to the resource market. The resource market gives them money. The money then is used to go to the product market. So I'm following the blue line. That's where all the products are that could satisfy the income requirement and the wants of that household. When the household then buys the product, it is revenue to the business. That's what they charge their customers. That's what they made. The business must take those revenues to pay for the costs to make the product, and they pay that cost to the resource market. That's where they're getting the resources from. So it's kind of, that's what's happening on the blue one, but it's also happening on the red one at the same time. So watch, let's go on the red one. Households sell their capital, their land, their labor to the resource market. The resource market then provides that to the businesses, and that's what the business is buying. The resources come into the business. The business makes the product to put into the product market, and then the goods and services are sent to the household. And that's a never-ending circular flow on how our market system works. Now, some drawbacks of this, some things that are not there, limitations. It doesn't show us any kind of transactions, households to households or business to business. The assumption that all economic activity is occurring this way. Not really. It ignores the government's involvement, and it doesn't explain how we determine product and resource prices. But when we start chapter 3 on Thursday, we'll start looking at that. So that's just some of the limitations, but that's still a great graph to really make us understand how our market system flows, how the resources go into products, and how households take their income from selling their resources to buy the products, and how it just keeps always moving. Are there any questions? And I'm kind of going, forgot you guys were even there with me. Anything? I'm looking to see. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I will make sure that the video is posted with the recording today so that you have access to it so you can listen to it. Okay, it's just describing the invisible hand. We talked about it too, so, but just so you can watch that. Okay, guys. The final thing I want to talk about then is how the market deals with risk. So how does our market system deal with risk? Actually, it's the entrepreneurs who really take on most of the risk, if not all. Because we are in a profit system, meaning you make a product, sell it to your customers. If you sell it to them more than it costs for you to make it, least cost production, you will have a product. So you will take on that risk. If you win, you have profit. If you lose, you have a loss, right? And that's how the system works. So a lot of the risk is on that entrepreneur, and they know going into it. So entrepreneurs are going to make good management decisions because of this risk. And they're going to try to avoid unnecessary risk. And that's why our market system survives and economic growth occurs, because of this self-interest in a profit motive. And the knowledge an entrepreneur has that if they don't make good decisions and don't respond to how consumers are purchasing, they will fail. Now let's talk about the business risk associated with employees and suppliers. There essentially is none. They are shielded from business risk. Why is that? Well, when you go to work, I know myself, employee works, generally, legally, they should receive their pay. So their profit, their paycheck is not based on risk. I went, I sold my labor to you, business owner. You paid me. I don't have the ability really to lose money. And I get my pay before you do, business owner. Okay. Same with suppliers. Oops. Suppliers don't bear the risk because products must be made. So they know they're going to sell their supplies to the businesses. So there's not a lot of risk for those two groups in our economy. So what's good about this? Well, you attract inputs. If you concentrate the risk just to owners of a business, there'll be people or resources, if you want to call them, who will be employees and suppliers because they don't have that risk. So that's one good thing of restricting the risk to owners. And then these owners will focus on profit maximization and prudent risk. So they're not going to be doing things, putting products out there that nobody wants and having shortages of other products. It's just naturally going to occur that because they have the risk and they are interested in a profit maximization, they're going to make the good decisions to achieve it. Okay, so I think that's all I wanted to talk about today. That takes us through the end of our chapter. And we would be done with chapter 2, and we're on schedule. We will be starting chapter 3 on Thursday. And we're going to focus most of our time on demand. Let's do a little bit with supply. If you noticed our voice lecture, the narrated PowerPoints for chapter 3 need to be listened to by the 24th. And then we will start lecturing, and we actually have the lecture expanding over 3 classes. Your Learn Smart would be due next Tuesday, the 29th, and the graded assignment on February 4th. So our first test is coming up on February 5th, so please keep that in mind. But for today, that is all I have. I'm going to go back to stop sharing my screen, Are there any kind of questions you all have for me? Well, I thank you for joining. Okay, if you have any questions between now and Thursday, let me know. Oh, by the way, make sure that your graded assignment for Chapter 2 is done by January 28th, which is next Monday at 11:59. And like I said, you want to listen to those narrated PowerPoints, get those done for Thursday so we can get into Chapter 3. We're going to do some classroom activities with Chapter 3 because now we're really getting into, we're out of the history, out of the background on the market, and we're going to look at supply, demand, and some market equilibrium in Chapter 3. Okay, so if that's all we have, I will see you on Thursday, and I'll let you know when I have this video posted and the link to the invisible hand video I showed. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.